the next thing we're going to talk about is something called code flow, which is basically understanding how the computer actually reads our code. And that will be clear right now. Let's say I'm going to nickname the number one Fred. Not sure why Fred is my go-to here. But before that, I'm going to say pfred. So I have 2 lines of code. First line says pfred. Second line says I'm going to nickname the number one Fred. What will happen? What do you think might happen when I run this? You get an error. And let's read it carefully. What line is the error on? It's on line 1. And how do I know that? Because the error message explicitly says 1. And it says the problem here is that there's an undefined local variable or method Fred for main object, name, error, gobbledygook, yada, yada, yada. What is the problem here? What's wrong with my code?
You haven't defined the variable yet, so it doesn't know what to do.
That's right. So this is the key in understanding how the computer reads our code. The computer takes each line of code from top down and reads it and processes it one line at a time. As opposed to, what's the alternative? The alternative, you might think that the computer sort of looks at all the lines of code in advance and processes it all together as a big blob. That's not what it does. Instead, the computer just reads each line as its own set of instructions, top to bottom. So the computer starts at the top, and it says pfred, and it blows up with an error saying, I don't know what Fred is. Now, even though on the very next line, we say what Fred is, we say, oh no, I know what Fred, what do you mean you don't know what Fred is? On line 2, we say that we're giving 1 the nickname Fred. Basically, Fred is a nickname for 1. What do you mean you don't know what Fred is? The answer is that the computer never got to line 2. It just read line 1. It just reads 1 line at a time, top to bottom. And if it encounters an error at any point, it just stops there. Our computer never saw line 2. It never saw it. Now, as humans, we could sort of see the intention here. We could see, oh, this person who wrote this code probably wanted to print the number 1 to the terminal. But the computer is not smart. The computer is a dumb piece of metal that just takes instructions literally, and it just takes 1 line in at a time. And it says, pfred, I'm done. I've had it. I don't know what Fred is. I refuse to look at the next line. To demonstrate that even further, just to hammer that home, what happens when I run this code? What will happen in the terminal? It will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, it should be fine.
What happens when right in the middle there I say pfred?
Probably just write Fred. Just put a number.
I like this. This is a nice healthy debate here. Let's see what happens. This will really hammer it home. It prints out 1, 2, 3, and then blows up on line 4 because it says, I don't know what Fred is. It does not go on to print 4 and 5. The computer quits. The computer exits as soon as it encounters an error. But it also, the fact that the computer processes 1 line at a time means that if there's an error up ahead, a few lines down, it doesn't blow up at the beginning because it doesn't know about that yet. It just reads 1 line at a time. So the computer starts out here. So really, it's really understanding, how does the computer read this? The computer reads it like this. It starts on line 1, P1. OK, I will fulfill that command. And it prints out 1 to the terminal. The computer executes and fulfills each line before it moves on to the next one. That's the key here. Then the computer goes on to P2, and it says, OK, I'll print that out to the terminal. And it does so. On line 3, it says P3. The computer says, OK, I'll process that, and I will execute it. I will do it right now. And I'll hit 3. And I'll print 3. Then it's pfred, and the computer says, I'm done. I don't know what Fred is. I am shutting down. And that's it. So it never reads lines 5 and 6 where we tell it to print 4 and 5. Yeah.
Are there other languages that wouldn't do that? Like
Not that I'm aware. So the question is, are there other languages that might? Well, I guess let's think. What would the alternative be?
Well, I don't understand this, but I think like C is called a compiled language, so it takes everything, checks for syntax errors before it does anything.
Yeah. So in C, since it pre-compiles it, it wouldn't even run any of these lines because it says, hey, you have on line 4, I could see ahead. You already have Fred there, and I don't know what that is. I'm going to refuse to even run the first line. So yes, that is an alternative world. But in Ruby, Ruby is like super dumb. It's just like I'm going to read each. I'm going to fulfill like a robot each line one at a time. And if I get through the whole program, great. If I count an error, then I'm done at that point. So that's a good point.
For languages that do that?
Well, yeah. So it's compiled versus interpreted. So C is a compiled language. Ruby is an interpreted language. And there might be other languages and other models and paradigms out there that I'm not even aware of. But those are the two that I'm aware of. I saw another hand. Yeah.
So how did the exercise skip around numbers?
That's a really good question. That's a great question. How did the exercise? I was hoping no one would ask me that. Okay. That's an advanced question. So there are certain kinds of errors that will cause the computer to, even Ruby, to not run any of the lines. And I don't even know if I know offhand why that is the case in some of the errors. So I think Ruby does go through a quick check for certain errors before it tries to run any of the lines. I think one of those errors that we had there was the @ sign. Yeah, so this basically contradicts everything I just said. Where Ruby said, I'm not running any of this because I see an @ sign up ahead and that doesn't make any sense. So I guess the answer here is that there are different kinds of errors. And this is like a real, I don't have an answer that I know for sure is true. But some errors are more severe where it won't run anything. But the most common error, but this is pretty rare that you'll encounter such an error. Most errors will run up until that point. That was a really good question. But in any case, the main thing I am trying to point out is that Ruby processes and executes each line top to bottom one at a time. It completes the line of code and fulfills it before it even moves on to the next line.